Alright you guys, today we're going to be doing old versus new UFC fighters, and the rules of this video are that the old fighters just either are retired or no longer active in a division, and the new fighters are currently fighting in a division. Anyway, let's go. So first off for the flyweight division, I've got Pantoja versus Demetrius Johnson. I don't really give a fuck about this division, like who actually does, but like realistically, this is probably the most interesting fight that I can make with this style. Demetrius Johnson, the flyweight goat, and Pantoja is just the champion. Like no one else, there's no one else really interested in the division. And I think Demetrius Johnson would easily win this fight, but there's not much else to be said for this one, is there? Pantoja would just lose. He's not as good as Demetrius Johnson. Anyway, onto the bantamweight division. O'Malley versus Demetrius Johnson. Right. So Demetrius Johnson in ONE FC, the flyweight division is 135 pounds, which is the same as UFC's bantamweight division. So these guys would be fighting each other, right? And this won't actually be an interesting fight because the size difference of O'Malley is so much taller and longer than Demetrius Johnson. But Demetrius is like so much more skilled. Well, like not necessarily more skilled, but you know what I'm saying. He's like the GOAT, so he's the lighter weight class GOAT, so this would be a really good fight. And I don't actually know how this could go because it would be either a really close, good fight with Demetrius probably winning off of the grappling, or Sean O'Malley might be able to KO Demetrius Johnson, who has to close a lot more distance to get within range to hit O'Malley because O'Malley's so much bigger than Demetrius. But yeah, I think this would actually be a really sick fight, and I wish this would actually happen. On to the next division, featherweight. Right, I want to see featherweight like prime Conor McGregor when he was undefeated at featherweight versus Ilia Topuria, because I think that would be such a good fight. But anyway, yeah, prime Conor versus Ilia Topuria would be a great fight. I think Ilia would probably win because he's overall more well-rounded than Conor, because they're both great strikers. Ilia's such a good boxer. Conor this time was just on a different level with striking, but I think Ilia's got better grappling. But I've got Max Holloway and Volk on here because I just want to see prime Conor versus every other featherweight champion because he already beat Aldo. But people are always like arguing in the featherweight debates who's the actual goat. Who's the actual goat? Is it Volkanovski? Is it Aldo? So imagine if they had a tournament, all the potential featherweight goats just fought each other to find out who the actual featherweight goat is. I think it's Volkanovski, like pretty comfortably. But yeah, it would be sick to see prime Conor versus prime Max Holloway versus prime Volkanovski. To be honest, I think prime Conor loses to all of them, but I still think there would be sick fights, and I would love to see it. Onto the lightweight division. Prime Tony Ferguson versus Charles Oliveira. Bro, this fight would be so sick. These are my two favorite fighters in the world, and this fight is like my dream fight, other than the Tony versus Khabib prime fight. I don't even know which way this would go, but I just wish I could see it because like Oliveira is a regen of Tony with slightly different skills, but they're pretty similar fighters, and it would just be such a war. Like imagine the striking and the grappling. I know they fought, but that was not prime Tony who fought Oliveira. That was after the knee, after the Gagey fight, and Tony was like 36 or 37 when he fought Oliveira, which means it was statistically permissible for him to lose at the lightweight division. He was way past his prime for a lightweight, so. But in this fight, prime Tony versus Oliveira would be so sick. I actually don't know who would win this one. Like, I'm going to lean towards Tony just because he is my actual favourite fighter of all time. And I feel like if Tony could avoid the takedowns and so just survive on the floor, then he would be able to probably beat Oliveira to a decision, or like a 5th round or 4th round TKO because of the pressure. I think Tony would definitely cut Oliveira up, and I think he would just wear through him on the feet towards the end of the fight in the later rounds with elbows and just constant pressure. But if it was like if Tony got taken to the ground too many times, I think Oliveira probably could submit him. Well, not like tap him out, but he could choke him out or like break his arm or something, like he did in the actual fight. But yeah, that would be a sick fight. This is probably one of my dream fights. But there's another one for the lightweight division. Khabib versus Islam would be such a sick fight. I know this would never happen, but you guys are not telling me this wouldn't be such a fire fight. Like, imagine the storyline behind this. Khabib was like, brother, you cannot become lightweight goat. This is my position. This is my job. And then Islam's like, alright, we fight for the lightweight goat. And they're not being friendly with each other for this one. Like, they're going fully in. This would be such a sick fight. Like, imagine the stare down. Just the two greatest lightweights of all time. It would be so cold. I wish they would fight. Obviously, Khabib's retired, and even if he wasn't, they would never fight. But it would be so sick. I think Islam would probably win. I know he's always saying it in training that he loses to Khabib, but I just think Islam's a more well-rounded fighter. But oh my god, it would be such a sick fight. Like, come on, bro. This would be so cold. The stare down would be ice if they weren't being like friendly with it. If they were like proper, if they put everything aside for this fight and they just went pure, like they went purely trying to beat each other, then the stare down would be so cold. This fight would be sick. Anyway, onto the welterweight division. Prime Kamaru Usman versus GSP. This one's like kind of obvious. You won the welterweight GOAT versus Kamaru Usman, who is like the second greatest welterweight of all time. It'd be a pretty interesting fight, but I feel like GSP is just slightly better in every single way than Kamaru Usman. Like, he's just more well-rounded, and I think it would probably be a decision. It'd probably be a bit of a boring fight, or maybe it'd be like one of the Colby fights. I don't think it would end in a finish though. But yeah, I think this would be a pretty good fight for the welterweight division. Anyway, on to the middleweight division. Israel Adesanya versus Prime Anderson Silva. Like, okay, maybe not Israel Adesanya just coming off of the DDP loss, but Israel Adesanya coming off of the Poatan win versus Anderson Silva in his prime would be such a good fight. Because I know they already fought. This is a bit like the Tony versus Oliveira fight. They fought, but that was way after Anderson Silva's prime. He was like 42 years old. But if you get prime Anderson Silva versus prime Izzy, it would be such a good fight. The striking would be so good. I think that, honestly, I think Israel might win. Just because Anderson Silva looked so good, but the level of competition he was fighting is just nowhere near as good as the level that Izzy was fighting. And I feel like Izzy would probably slightly beat him, but it could go either way. And I think the striking would be so good to watch, unless they were like, it could actually, to be fair, it could be really boring and it could just not engage. But if they were going at it, then it would be an amazing fight. Anyway, onto the light heavyweight division. Poatan versus John Jones, coming off of the DC win the second time. This could be such a cold fight. Like, people already think that Poatan could move up to heavyweight to fight John Jones. But imagine like the prime John Jones versus Pereira. If Pereira didn't get like grappled and ragdolled, then this would be such a good fight. If Pereira could keep it on the feet a little bit and not get just wrestle fucked, then this would be such a good fight for like how long it lasted. Because it's just cold. It's cold. Pereira is like the coldest fighter in the UFC. This John Jones was pretty cold, although he was kind of zesty too, but he was still pretty cold after knocking out DC. This fight could go like one of two ways, really. It's either going to go, Pereira's either going to knock him out, or John Jones is going to grapple him and just hold him down, I think. I think John Jones would win the fight, just because he's way more well-rounded than Pereira. But if Pereira could always catch him, because he's always got that power where he could just end the fight in seconds. But I think John Jones would probably just grapple him. I don't think he would actually submit him, because Pereira's actually pretty good on the ground at just not getting submitted. But I think John Jones would probably hold him down, land a bit of ground and pound, and probably win a decision. Which would probably be pretty boring, but whilst the fight was actually happening, I think it'd be so entertaining because you just don't know what's going to happen. Like if Pereira got up and started striking, you'd be like, okay, the whole fight is just changing. Even if it ended up being like 5 rounds of John Jones laying on Pereira, whilst you'd be watching the fight, you would be entertained because you just don't know what's going to happen next. Anyway, moving on to the heavyweight division. Francis Ngannou versus John Jones. Everyone wanted to see this fight, and it just never happened. This would have been such a good fight. John Jones is kind of fat though at heavyweight and past his prime now. Look at him, he looks so retarded there. But honestly, I think Francis might have won because I think John Jones didn't want this fight. Francis Ngannou, look at the differences in their physiques right here. Francis Ngannou is built and John Jones is just fat. I think Francis might actually have a chance of winning this fight. Everyone wanted to see this happen and it never did. The heavyweight division is kind of dead, so other than this, there's not really like much going on that I could have made for this video. There's a small chance this could still happen, but I don't think John Jones wants it, to be honest. And I know that Dana White is always saying John Jones was always up for this fight. It was Francis that didn't want it. But honestly, bro, I believe that Francis wanted it. Look at he looks like a killer. John Jones looks kind of scared in this picture. But anyway, you guys, that's it.